They say you never really own the land. You just take care of it long enough to pass it on, if you're lucky. That's what my dad told me the morning he pressed the deed into my palm, right there by the kitchen window, the sun coming in sideways over the hills that rolled on like old bones under the grass. I thought I understood him back then. I really did. But if you'd told me how far I'd go to defend this patch of earth, or how hard people would try to take it, I probably would have just laughed. Young, dumb, thinking fences and paperwork were enough to keep trouble out. I spent nearly 3 decades on this place, waking up to the cold air off the creek, fixing fences, planting trees, raising a kid and horses, and just living simple, honest work that left you tired in the right way. That creek wasn't just a line on a map or some running water, you know? It was memory. It was the reason our orchard still bloomed every spring, why our pasture stayed green through July, why my son's first swing hung from a branch that bent over its banks. But I guess good things always draw somebody's eye. I'll never forget that first orange stake in the ground. Just a little plastic thing, but it might as well have been a flare. At first I figured maybe it was the utility company, checking lines or whatnot. But then I saw the others, bright string winding from stake to stake, carving a weird, crooked path right through my lower pasture, just upstream from where the horses drank. And every stake had HOA Dev scrawled in thick Sharpie. My stomach dropped like a stone. I knew they'd wanted this creek for years, tried twice at county meetings to get it for their so-called nature feature, paddle boats, duck ponds, all that. And both times I'd stood up, deed in hand, history on my side, and told them flat out, no, this water stays where it belongs. I guess I thought that would be enough. Turns out, I was wrong. Real wrong. Nobody called. Nobody wrote a letter or knocked on my door. They just came out with their stakes and their tape, like squatters planning a new subdivision. I took photos of everything and sat up half the night at my kitchen table, whiskey glass sweating rings onto the plat maps, trying to calm down. But something in me, maybe it was all those years in the service, or just knowing what a real fight feels like, told me this was no mistake. This was the opening move. Next day I walked the creek, boots heavy in the wet grass, and found tire tracks by the old gate. A digger or loader, big as anything. And the chain I'd always kept locked was clipped and tossed in the weeds. They'd already been in, bold as you please. I called the sheriff, but he just shrugged. Civil matter, maybe. Get a lawyer. Property law's tricky. And the water running under my feet suddenly felt colder. You ever have one of those weeks where every day is just waiting for the next punch? 3 days later, a white SUV pulls up, windows tinted, tires too clean for this road. Out steps Karen Whitlow, HOA president and local real estate queen, all heels and hair and attitude. She didn't even bother saying hello, just looked over her sunglasses and said, "You should have seen this coming." I told her I wasn't about to roll over. She smirked. "We need water features for property value. The board approved. Phase 3 last quarter. Annexation is under review." I laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was so absurd. She just shrugged. You'd be surprised what a motivated community can accomplish. Well, maybe, but she was about to find out what one stubborn man could do. Within 2 days, the bulldozers showed up, 3 of them, plus a backhoe and a pack of guys in vests, stomping around like they owned the joint. I went out with my shotgun, not loaded, but they didn't know that, and yelled till my throat hurt. They backed off, left me with some memo from the HOA citing Community Infrastructure and Recreational Zoning Article 7B. Total garbage. The sun went down on busted branches, torn up earth, and me sitting alone, madder than I'd been in years. Next morning, I parked myself right at the edge of my drive, thermos in hand, just waiting. Sure enough, here they came. White pickups, decals on the doors, survey gear rattling around in the back. This time, they didn't even pretend to care. I blocked the path, ripped up their plastic flags, and said if they didn't have a court order or a county permit, they could take a hike. One guy, a contractor, probably, looked nervous, mumbled about approval. I said, HOA doesn't overrule a land deed. And just like that, Karen stepped out of her SUV, boots now, big puffy jacket. That same cat smile. Hydrological survey, she claimed. Preliminary planning. I called her bluff. She started talking about the greater good, wildlife, recreation, the future. I told her the only future she needed to worry about was a court date. That's when things got ugly. My lawyer, Roger, old school, paper files, big desk, told me straight up, they'll push. They'll blur the lines. Hope you cave before it gets expensive. So we documented everything. Cameras, logs, photos. I became a watchdog on my own land. And the intrusions kept coming. Each one a little bolder. First it was more survey flags, then test trenches, then, one evening, I found a sign staked right in the mud. Future site of Silver Pines Reflection Lake. Artist rendering, paddle boats, smiling kids. Not a single word about whose land it was. But here's the twist they never saw coming. Underneath all this soil, right where they were planning there, Grand Lake, was a layer of clay thick as a dinner plate, slick and shifting. Build a dam here without proper foundation, and you don't get a pond. You get a time bomb. But the HOA didn't care. The survey crews vanished for a week, quiet as you please. I thought maybe, just maybe, they'd gotten the message. Nope. My neighbor Glenn came barreling up on his four-wheeler one morning. Face red. Eyes wide. They're pouring concrete down by the bend, he panted. By the time I made it there, the machines were roaring, the water backing up behind a wall of fresh, wet cement. It wasn't some plan. Anymore. It was happening, right now on my land. I confronted the foreman, demanded to see permits. All he had was a sheet from the HOA, not the city. I told him this was the last warning, get out or get the sheriff. He packed up, but we both knew they'd just come back. And the dam stayed. The creek slowed to a trickle, my fields yellowed, my irrigation lines sputtered. The orchard started. Dropping fruit, the pasture dried out. I watched years of work shrivel while across the water, the HOA strung up banners and held their grand opening for a shiny new clubhouse, complete with paddle boats and a residents-only sign, all of it fed by water stolen right from under me. But my ace in the hole, water rights older than the neighborhood, older than the HOA, hell, older than Karen herself, filed by my grandfather, registered, enforceable, and still active. Roger drew up the paperwork. We filed a formal complaint, called the Environmental Board. Got the state water authorities involved. That's when the HOA went scorched earth. They slapped bogus violation notices on my barn and compost pile. They threatened legal action, called me in. Obstructionist, said I was standing in the way of progress. And you know what? Maybe I was. Maybe progress needs a little resistance when it starts to look like arrogance in a business suit. They tried everything. HOA enforcers in matching polos, intimidation, 2 men with clipboards showing up at sunset trying to inspect my fences, but I wasn't having it. I called the cops every time, started sleeping with the lights on, the old shotgun by my bed. Then came the break in the weather, and in the dam. Heavy rain, the kind that turns the sky black and the ground to soup. I checked my cameras. The cracks in the concrete were widening, water was weeping through, and suddenly I wasn't just the crazy old landowner anymore. I was the only guy who knew how bad it could get. I sent everything to the state inspector, Denise. Pictures, footage, the whole mess. She came out, eyes narrowed, shaking her head. This shouldn't be here. And it shouldn't look like that. She promised an emergency assessment, but warned me the HOA would push back, make it political. But it was already personal. The land was tired of being ignored. And sure enough, the storm broke. Water behind the dam rose fast, cracks spread, and at 5:43 on a Saturday, I watched through my drone as the wall finally gave. First a trickle, then a roar, the concrete splitting wide. Water surging through with all the fury nature can muster when it's been penned up too long. The flood took everything in its path, clubhouse, deck, paddle boats, cars, and every illusion the HOA had. Built about who controlled this place. People screamed, the sheriff showed up, and I filmed it all. By morning, the clubhouse was a ruin, the lake gone, the truth as naked as the mud in the fields. Karen accused me of sabotage, but the evidence, the drone footage, the permits, the warnings, all pointed right back at her and her board. News crews rolled in. The story exploded. Residents demanded resignations. The HOA board collapsed under the weight of its own hubris. The county took over, lawsuits flew, and in the end, the court didn't just clear my name. It declared once and for all that this land, my land, was not to be claimed by any HOA, now or ever. No more stakes, no more memos, no more lies dressed up as community progress. The creek runs free now, the orchard's coming back. And the silence that's settled over this place isn't empty, it's earned. But let me tell you, it never really ends. Not with a bang, not with a handshake in a courtroom, but with a lesson that sticks. Long after the cameras are gone, power taken without consent always comes due. Nature doesn't sign contracts, and if you build your kingdom on someone else's soil, without asking, don't be surprised when it all washes away in the night. Because land remembers, and water, well, water always finds its way. So, what do you think? Was I right to fight back? Or was it just one more stubborn old man standing in the way of progress? Go ahead, tell me. I'll be here, same as always, listening to the creek, making sure it never forgets its name.